Hello everyone, and welcome to Module 2 of our Social Media Law and Risk Management course. And we're starting to look now at defamation and the courts. The reason we're looking for these is that, as you learned in the first module, once you're using social media, you are actually a publisher in the eyes of the law. Now, this leaves you exposed in all sorts of areas of media law that publishers have traditionally been exposed to. And so the two areas we'll be looking at over the next couple of weeks will be defamation, where we'll be looking at what defamation is and how it applies in different parts of the world, and then a little bit at the court system and open justice, because sometimes, no matter where you're working in social media, it could be that you find yourself in conflict with some of the laws applying to reporting matters related to the courts. Well, defamation is all about people's reputation, and the laws applying to reputation and defamation vary a little bit across the major countries of the world, and certainly across the key jurisdictions that we've been looking at for this course: the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. These countries do have slightly varying defamation laws, or the laws of libel and slander, as they're still called in some places. We'll look at that in more detail next week, but the main issues we're going to cover are your level of responsibility for what you publish and what others may publish on your websites and social media feeds, and also the key defences that might apply to you. In other words, when you really need to call out for legal help, because professional advice is always recommended if something serious is emerging that seems like a defamation threat. But also, there are some defences that you can work within pretty much as a matter of course, particularly if you're working in a country like the United States, which has very strong First Amendment protections. In the second week, when we look at the courts, we'll be looking at open justice principles that apply across all of those Western jurisdictions. These are principles that hark back through many centuries, which really create the default position that the courts should be open to scrutiny and criticism. But we'll particularly look at some areas that social media might find confronting and might create hazards in the use of social media in a court context. And one of the biggest ones of these is where you might be commenting on something on social media that relates to some upcoming trial, or is perhaps subject to a suppression order or some other kind of order by the courts. Of course, there are other areas in court to do with the courts and judges that we really do need to take care with, and one of the biggest ones is harsh criticism of a judge or a court decision. Now again, US First Amendment laws allow a lot of free speech there. In Australia, the UK, Canada and New Zealand, we have less freedom to criticise the courts and to comment on ongoing cases. And we'll look at that in more detail. Both of these areas are crucial for journalists and publishers working in the social media space. And if you are doing so regularly, I would strongly recommend you particularly look at the defamation and contempt chapters of the introductory media law texts in your respective countries. The reason for that is that you'll probably need slightly deeper knowledge of defamation and contempt of court if you're making your living out of working in that space. For the purposes of this course, however, you won't need to venture to those media law textbooks for dealing with the learning problem that we present you with. Now, the learning problem will cut across both of these key areas of defamation and contempt, and dealing with the courts. So I really look forward to the various discussion board discussions about the learning problem as that unfolds and see you identify the key issues that are involved. Well, enough of that for the moment. I hope you've enjoyed your first module as you move into the second, and I'm looking forward to talking in more detail with you about these very important areas of defamation and the courts.